You're about to meet an angry man, Mr. William Connor, who carries on his shoulder a chip the size of the national debt. This is a sour man, a lonely man, who's tired of waiting for the breaks that come to others but never to him. Mr. William Connor, whose own blind hatred is about to catapult him into the darkest corner of the Twilight Zone. These words served as the opening narration for the first segment of Twilight Zone the movie, a 1983 anthology film based on the 1950s-1960s sci-fi anthology television series, The Twilight Zone, created by Rod Serling. The film was originally conceived by Serling himself. After his death, it was shelved and later resurrected by Warner Brothers, who got Steven Spielberg to produce the film. The first segment of this film features the bigoted Bill Connor, played by Vic Morrow, in what would turn out to be his final film role. In the film, Bill Connor is sent back in time to suffer the injustices faced by the people he is prejudiced against. In the final film, Bill Connor is carted off to a concentration camp in Nazi Germany. But in an alternate ending that never made it into the final cut, this wasn't his fate at all. The segment, as originally written by writer-director John Landis, ended in much the same way as it ends in the final film. However, Warner Brothers feared Vic Morrow's character was too unsympathetic and wanted a moment of redemption for him. So, Landis invented a new scene where the character of Bill Connor redeems his racist ways by saving two children from an attack by U.S. troops on a Vietnamese village during the Vietnam War. It was during the filming of this scene that Morrow and two illegally hired child actors tragically lost their lives. The tragic story of the deaths of actor Vic Morrow, 7-year-old Myca Dihn Lee, and 6-year-old Renee Shin-Yi begins with director John Landis' vision for the first segment of Twilight Zone the movie. The newly written, action-packed ending for Landis' segment was always envisioned as a night shoot, with Bill Connor, played by Vic Morrow, carrying Myca and Renee across a river to safety from an overhead helicopter firing down upon them. Not only was the scene inherently dangerous, it was also problematic in that it involved filming child actors after 10 p.m., which would require a special waiver from the State Labor Board. Instead of pursuing this waiver, which probably would not have been approved, Landis opted to hire Myca and Renee under the table. Renee's father, Chen, learned about the opportunity for his daughter to be in the film from his brother, who was friends with production secretary Donna Schumann. Mr. Shin said Myca and Renee's audition consisted of the children basically being brought before Landis on set. He took one look at them and simply said, "It's good. It's fine." The scene was now ready to film. Chen, a Vietnamese immigrant who had lived through the Vietnam War, said the explosions he saw on set were worse horrors than what he witnessed in his home country. The shoot with the kids and Morrow was rehearsed only a few times before they began filming, and never with the full explosions that were to be used for the scene. The children's parents were left in the dark about the nature of the scene by associate producer George Folsey Jr., who neglected to mention to Myca's mother that the scene would feature a helicopter. Folsey also told Renee's father that the scene would be very simple and that he did not need to be present when it was being shot. In fact, the scene would be very complicated, with effects man James Chamomile needing to fire off the explosions with perfect timing when the helicopter was at a safe enough height. They went into the scene without ever practicing this. The cameras rolled at approximately 2:20 a.m. on July 23, 1982, at Indian Dunes in Santa Clarita, California. Vic Morrow was carrying the two children across the river, one child in each arm, with the helicopter above. Landis kept screaming for the helicopter to go lower until it was only 25 feet above the actors. It was then that Chamomile triggered a massive explosion, causing the helicopter's tail rotor to fail and detach. The helicopter spiraled out of control. Morrow dropped Renee into the water and reached out to grab her when the helicopter landed on top of the actors. Morrow and Myca were decapitated by the rotor blades, while Renee was crushed by the helicopter's right landing skid. They all died instantly. Pilot Dorsey Wingo and 5 other passengers survived. In the aftermath of the accident, Rolling Stone published an article examining the accident and Landis's culpability. Following the release of this article, many famous directors banded together to write an open letter in Landis's defense, including Francis Ford Coppola and George Lucas, arguing experts around Landis were responsible for keeping his creative vision in check. Landis attempted damage control that likely only incurred further damage. He crashed Vic Morrow's funeral and made a speech saying he was proud to have directed Vic in the Twilight Zone, claiming Vic considered it the best performance of his career. He finished by saying Vic would be immortalized in the film. Vic's ex-wife and girlfriend both countered that Vic felt the film was, quote, a piece of shit. Landis also attended Chen's funeral, placing flowers on her coffin. On May 31, 1983, the LA County Grand Jury opened hearings in a civil case, and Landis testified voluntarily. Nonetheless, on June 16th, Landis, production assistant Dan Allingham, and Folsey were indicted for involuntary manslaughter. The next day, Wingo and effects coordinator Paul Stewart were also indicted, and Wingo's pilot license revoked. On June 24th, they were all arraigned on the same day as the premiere of Twilight Zone the movie. Jennifer Jason Leigh, Morrow's daughter, settled out of court with Landis and the producers for an undisclosed amount. The 5 men accused of manslaughter now had to stand trial on April 3, 1984. The National Transportation Safety Board concluded that the crash had been caused by the onset explosion, which they detailed in a report Landis attempted to have changed to no avail. They determined that had the helicopter been hovering higher, even with the explosion, Wingo might have been able to enter an auto-rotative descent without his tail rotor and land the helicopter safely. The trial was underway. Production Secretary Donna Schumann, called to the stand by prosecutor Leah Perwin DeAugustino, testified that Landis ignored warnings that the scene was dangerous. The defense, led by attorneys John F. Neal and Harlan Braun, said she was lying, to which she responded, "We can't all be liars. Why would I lie?" The trial lasted 10 months. Landis testified he did not believe the scene was inherently dangerous. Dorsey Wingo essentially blamed Vic Morrow for not getting out of the way fast enough. The jury watched the crash from 6 different angles in a Warner Brothers screening room. Jackie Cooper, a former child actor who'd appeared on the original Twilight Zone television show, as well as chairman of the then newly formed Safety Committee of the Directors Guild of America, was brought on as expert testimony and condemned the shoot. The defense's argument hinged on the accident being unforeseeable. Finally, after 9 days of deliberation, on May 29, 1987, all 5 defendants were found not guilty on all charges, including charges of child endangerment. The accident did change the way films are made. Child labor laws for film productions became much stricter. The Federal Aviation Administration put forward new regulations on how helicopters can be used in film, requiring a waiver to be acquired. Warner Brothers set up safety committees to regulate every potentially unsafe aspect of filmmaking, which resulted in the safety manuals now passed out on every major film set to this day. The Directors Guild began punishing directors who did not adhere to safety regulations. The Screen Actors Guild set up a hotline where actors could voice their safety concerns. The accident also created the job of on-set risk manager, which did not exist prior. Landis, unlike Hollywood, learned nothing. He invited the jury to a special screening of his film Coming to America 1 year after the trial, as a perverted sort of thank you. Even defense attorney Harland Braun thought this was in poor taste, saying he wondered why the dead children's parents weren't invited. Landis also clashed with Eddie Murphy, the star of Coming to America, whom he resented for not coming to the trial to support him. Murphy stood his ground, saying he didn't believe Landis was blameless. Spielberg concurred, as he disowned Landis after the accident. George Miller, who directed the final segment of Twilight Zone, left the production in disgust, leaving Joe Dante, the director of the film's third segment, to supervise editing of his segment. Second assistant director Andy House had his name removed from the credits, replaced with the pseudonym Alan Smithy. I would like to end by saying that even though this story has been covered many times, I felt compelled to do so again because of my personal connection to Twilight Zone the movie, which I was obsessed with in my younger years, and whose third segment I still use in my classroom as a teaching tool to this day. Film accidents are never completely avoidable, as we can still see to this day with examples like the accidental fatal shooting on the set of Rust in October 2021. I hope I provided some new details even if you've heard this story before, and in my opinion it's certainly a story worth repeating for what we can learn from it. Please keep all victims' families in your thoughts. Thank you guys, stay safe out there, and remember, don't get scared out of sorts.